Get ready for a wild ride through the front line of environmental ethics. Invasive species, they may sound harmless, but these biological invaders wreak havoc on ecosystems worldwide, disrupting native species and altering landscapes. Now, meet the disruptors, animal rights activists passionately opposed to the eradication of these invaders. They believe every creature deserves a chance, even those disrupting delicate ecological balances. It's a clash of principles and priorities, biodiversity preservation versus ethical treatment of all beings. Number 1. Rusty crayfish. Rusty crayfish, those tough invaders from the Ohio River Basin, have really made a splash in new territories, and not in a good way. These guys are aggressive and super tough, which helps them elbow out the native crayfish for food and homes. It's like they come in, set up shop, and the locals have to scramble just to survive. These crayfish aren't picky eaters either. They chow down on everything from plants to animals. When they move into a new pond or stream, they go on a feeding frenzy that wipes out a ton of aquatic vegetation. That messes with the whole food chain, making life hard for native fish and bugs that rely on that greenery for shelter and food. But while some folks are all for kicking these rusties to the curb to protect our local wildlife, others say we should take it easy. They argue that maybe these crayfish could bring in some cash through fishing or tourism. It's a real debate, and finding a middle ground isn't easy when there are so many factors to consider. Number 2. Foxes. Another troublemaker in Australia is the European red fox. Brought over in the mid-19th century for hunting, these foxes have spread like wildfire across the country. They've wreaked havoc on native wildlife, leading to the extinction of several species of marsupials and birds. Animals like the desert rat kangaroo and the lesser bilby have vanished, and many more are now on the brink because of these sneaky predators. But the problems don't stop in the wild. European red foxes have also moved into residential areas, scavenging for food and causing all sorts of issues. They raid bins, prey on pets and poultry, and are a general nuisance for urban residents. Their ability to adapt and find food anywhere makes them a significant pest, posing a continuous threat to both Australia's wildlife and city life. The biggest problem is that they're adorable animals, and this has gotten them the sympathies of many activists. Number 3. Silver carp. Another big invasive species causing major issues is the Asian carp. Originally brought to North America to clean up algae in fish farms, these carp escaped into the wild and have spread rapidly through rivers and lakes. They're known for their huge appetites, gobbling up tons of plankton, which disrupts the food chain and leaves less for native fish species. This has led to declines in native fish populations, messing up ecosystems and hurting the fishing industry. Asian carp can be a real hazard for people too. The carp is a massive fish, weighing up to 60 pounds. These fish are known to jump out of the water when startled by boats, sometimes injuring boaters and damaging equipment. Efforts to control their spread have included electric barriers and targeted fishing, but keeping their population in check is no easy feat. They've become quite a nuisance in most of North America, especially Missouri. Of course, who's going to explain all this to the animal rights activists? Luckily, though, fish tend to stay out of the spotlight, and so the activists don't cause too many problems. But this next one is a bit different. Number 4. Wild horses. North Carolina's wild horse population is a gift from European colonizers, and these wild horses have become invasive. These majestic beasts might seem picturesque, but they're actually wreaking havoc on the local habitat. They trample and eat the plants that keep the barrier islands intact, which leads to serious erosion issues and increases the risk of damage from hurricanes. This doesn't just mess up the landscape, it also disrupts the food sources for fish and other animals that rely on those plants to survive. They compete with native wildlife for resources, and their overgrazing can lead to significant habitat degradation. Conservationists are trying to manage the population by using contraceptive darts, but the situation is complicated by tourists and animal rights activists. Tourists and animal rights activists often feed the horses, making them dependent on human food and putting everyone at risk. There have been instances of people getting hurt by the horses, as well as the horses being harmed by food they shouldn't be eating. It's a tricky situation where well-meaning actions often backfire, making it harder to protect both the environment and the horses. Number 5. Feral hogs. A little less lovable than horses, feral boars, or feral hogs as they're more commonly called, are causing chaos across farmlands in the US. They rack up a whopping $1.5 billion in damages every year by rooting up crops, tearing through fields, and generally wreaking havoc on farms. It's a massive hit to farmers and the whole agricultural industry. Their non-stop munching not only destroys crops, but also messes up the habitats of native wildlife, throwing local ecosystems out of whack. To keep these wild hogs in check, conservationists have tried everything from setting up traps loaded with tasty treats to taking them down from helicopters. These efforts are all about reducing their numbers and curbing their destructive impact on agriculture and nature. But these pigs are tough and smart, so managing them is an ongoing battle that calls for constant innovation and tough measures. These farmers and conservationists have been a little safer from activists, but their job isn't exactly fun. Number 6. Lionfish. Invasive lionfish have become a serious threat to coral reefs, especially in the Caribbean and Atlantic regions. These predators are voracious eaters, targeting native fish crucial for maintaining the delicate balance of healthy coral reef ecosystems. Their population boom has led to big drops in reef fish numbers, putting the entire reef system at risk. What makes lionfish tougher to deal with is their venomous spines, which scare off predators and let them take over without much competition from other sea creatures. Conservationists have been crusading against the lionfish invasion. Spearfishing has been used not only to reduce lionfish numbers, but also to promote their consumption on the seafood market. Research efforts focus on understanding their spread patterns and ecological impacts to inform effective management strategies. Some amazing approaches include training native sharks to recognize and prey upon lionfish, recruiting nature's hunters to help control their population. This is an effort to curb the lionfish invasion and preserve the biodiversity and resilience of coral reef ecosystems for future generations. Number 7. Burmese python. The Burmese python is like that unwanted guest who crashes the party and won't leave, except it's crashing the Everglades ecosystem in Florida. These snakes are trouble for a couple of big reasons. First off, they didn't bring any predators with them from Southeast Asia, where they're originally from. So, here in Florida, they've basically had a free pass to grow supersized without anyone putting them in check. And these pythons aren't picky eaters either. They'll take anything they can catch, from raccoons to deer, and even endangered species like the key largo woodrat. Number 8. European starling. The European starling's invasion of the United States began with an admirer of Shakespeare releasing 60 of them into Central Park in the 1890s. The idea was to fill the American landscape with all the birds mentioned by the bard. This well-meaning but misguided act led to an explosion of starlings across the country. Fast forward, and these starlings, originally from Europe, Southwestern Asia, and North Africa, spread like wildfire across the country. Now, with around 46 million of them fluttering about, starlings are one of the most common songbirds in the US, but their numbers have actually dropped by more than half over the last 50 years. Despite their decline, they cause over $800 million in crop damage each year and often kick native birds out of their nests, messing with other species' reproduction. Plus, they carry a bunch of diseases like transmissible gastroenteritis, blastomycosis, and salmonella. Their droppings can also foster a fungus that causes lung infections in humans. It's a classic case of a well-meaning idea going way off the rails. Number 9. Gray squirrels. The invasive gray squirrel is causing quite a stir wherever it decides to call home outside its native range in North America. Originally introduced to places like the UK and parts of Europe, these squirrels have become a headache for native red squirrels and local ecosystems. One of the biggest issues is their ability to outcompete and even bully the smaller, native red squirrels. Gray squirrels are bigger, more aggressive, and carry a pox virus that doesn't affect them but can devastate red squirrel populations. These little guys are also outstanding snack thieves, raiding bird feeders and gobbling up nuts and seeds that native wildlife relies on. This not only messes with the food supply, but can also disrupt the balance of plant and animal interactions in forests and parks. Efforts to control gray squirrel populations range from trapping and relocation to more controversial methods like culling to protect native species and restore natural balances. It's a tricky situation, balancing conservation and wildlife management. Number 10. Giraffes. Giraffes, with their graceful stature, face complex challenges in their populations, including issues like older bulls impacting breeding dynamics. As male giraffes age, some are unable to successfully breed because of declining fertility or physical conditions. Interestingly, older bulls have also been observed to become aggressive towards younger males, sometimes leading to lethal confrontations. This behavior isn't just a matter of dominance, it can disrupt the stability of giraffe herds and impact population dynamics. Number 11. House sparrow. House sparrows were introduced to Brooklyn in 1851 to tackle caterpillar infestations and protect the city's basswood trees from linden moths. After several more releases, these old-world songbirds managed to spread across the entire continental US in less than 50 years. Originally from Europe and Asia, house sparrows are now among the most widely distributed birds globally. In the US, house sparrows are one of the most common birds, with a population of over 7 million. Although this is a significant drop from the 1940s, when there were about 150 million house sparrows in the country. The exact reasons for their decline aren't entirely clear, but the industrialization of American farms might have something to do with it. Despite their decrease in numbers, house sparrows are still seen as pests by some farmers and are known to be aggressive competitors for nesting space, often driving native species out of nest boxes. Number 12. European rabbits. Cats weren't the only troublesome import brought over by European colonizers. Australia has had a major issue with European rabbits since they were introduced in the late 19th century. Today, there are an estimated 200 million feral rabbits, causing chaos across the continent. The rapid increase in rabbit numbers wreaked havoc on Australian agriculture. They destroyed crops and land, leading to significant soil erosion and overgrazing, which in turn contributed to the decline of native plant and animal species. Their adaptability played a big role in their spread. All they need is soil to burrow in and short grasses to graze on, which are easy to find across Australia. There have been plenty of efforts by conservationists to try and control their population. They built fences, but they found ways around. They developed rabbit-specific diseases, but they developed a tolerance. They reproduce rapidly, producing multiple litters each year, which makes controlling their population even more challenging. Number 13. Green iguana. These iguanas are a real headache. They munch on residential and commercial plants, devouring tree foliage, flowers, fruits, except citrus, and veggies. Their burrowing can mess up sidewalks, foundations, seawalls, and canal banks, leading to costly repairs. Plus, they leave droppings everywhere, from docks and boats to pool platforms and porches, which can spread salmonella. In natural areas, they threaten native species, eating endangered tree snails and plants like the nickerbean, crucial for the Miami blue butterfly. Despite all these issues, activists often get in the way of control efforts, making it tough to manage the iguana population effectively. Number 14. Banteng cows. Banteng cows, originally from Southeast Asia, have become quite a problem in Australia. Banteng cows are increasing the intrusion of salt water into freshwater habitats. They roam through wetlands and floodplains, destroying wetland vegetation that's essential for maintaining the balance between saltwater and freshwater ecosystems. By trampling these plants, they disrupt the natural filtration and control of water levels, leading to more salt water encroaching into freshwater zones. This can have serious effects on freshwater species and the overall health of these ecosystems. Number 15. Raccoons. Those cute little masked bandits, raccoons, have become a real headache outside their native North America. Thanks to humans, they've spread far and wide, causing havoc in places like Europe and Japan, where they were intentionally introduced. In Germany alone, their population exploded to over 1 million by 2012, and they ventured into neighboring countries too. Interestingly, some of Germany's raccoons can trace their roots back to a World War II fur farm airstrike that set a bunch of them free. The introduction of pet raccoons inspired by the 1970s cartoon Rascal, the raccoon turned out to be a fiasco. More than 1,500 of these mischievous critters were brought in as pets, but like their animated counterpart, they proved too wild to handle. Owners released them into the wild, and now raccoons are munching their way through agricultural crops to the tune of $300,000 a year on one small island alone. Despite their destructive tendencies and disease-carrying potential, hello rabies, raccoons are tough to control because, well, they're kind of adorable. Their cunning and adaptability make them formidable pests, but authorities in affected regions are stepping up efforts to manage their populations. From trapping and relocation to more proactive measures like education and stricter pet ownership laws, the battle against these rascals continues. Number 16. Pablo Escobar's hippos. In Colombia, the story of Pablo Escobar's hippos reads like something out of a surreal wildlife documentary. Since he's gone, these hefty 3.5-ton creatures have been multiplying like, well, hippos do, and fast. Without intervention, experts fear their numbers could swell to a staggering 1,000 by 2035, which spells trouble for Colombia's delicate ecosystems. These invasive giants trample through habitats, munching on local flora and outcompeting native species for resources. Their enormous droppings also pose a serious threat to water quality, potentially contaminating aquatic environments. Number 17. Cats. Did you know that feral cats are causing major problems for Australia's native wildlife? These cats aren't originally from the continent, and their presence is leading to the extinction of over 100 native species. Brought over by European settlers in the 18th century, feral cats have since spread all over, hunting birds, small mammals, reptiles, and insects. Their impact is massive, pushing many native species to the brink of extinction and messing up the delicate balance of Australia's ecosystems. Feral cats are estimated to kill over 2 billion animals every year in Australia, hitting endangered species like the greater bilby, the numbat, and the western ground parrot particularly hard. The Australian government has taken steps to tackle this issue, including culling programs and setting up predator-free sanctuaries to protect vulnerable wildlife. But animal rights activists and pet owners keep getting in the way of their efforts. Number 18. Australian camels. Camels in the Australian wilds might seem calm and lazy, but they're causing a lot of trouble out there. They break fences, damage pipes, and drink up water holes dry. Plus, they're stripping the land bare, which is bad news for the native wildlife. Initially, bringing camels to Australia seemed like a smart move to handle the tough outback conditions. But now, it's turned into a real mess. They've adapted too well and become a long-term disaster for the environment. To tackle the camel problem, the Aussie government has been culling about 160,000 of them since 2009 using firearms. That sparked some controversy, as you'd expect. On the flip side, some folks are trying to make the best of it. For example, Summer Land Camels in Queensland has turned camel milk into a business. They've got over 550 camels on their farm, producing everything from camel cheese to salted caramel gelato. Meanwhile, Kiwi Camel is gearing up to launch camel milk chocolates. Who knew camels could be so versatile? Number 19. Nutria. The nutria, originally brought to the United States for its fur, has become a serious headache due to its knack for survival and reproduction. These large rodents were introduced in 1889, but went rogue when the fur market crashed in the 1940s. Ranchers, unable to sustain them, set many free. Now they're wreaking havoc across at least 20 states, with California being the latest victim. Nutria are voracious eaters, gobbling up weeds and vegetation like there's no tomorrow. While that might sound helpful, they also chomp down on native plants and crops, wreaking havoc on delicate wetland ecosystems. They're considered invasive for good reason. They disrupt habitats and outcompete native species. Efforts to control nutria populations have been mixed. Some states have taken aggressive measures to cull them, while others debate the most humane methods. Activists often clash over these actions, with some advocating for more humane management practices or even relocation efforts rather than outright eradication. Number 20. Axis deer. The axis deer might not be the most aggressive critters out there, but they sure know how to stir up trouble in Texas and Hawaii. Down in the Lone Star State, where space is already tight, these guys are duking it out with native white-tailed deer for grub and living space. When drought hits, it's like a buffet battle royale, with everyone scrambling for a bite. Farmers aren't too thrilled either, as the axis deer have a knack for trampling crops and munching through grazing lands, making life harder for the folks trying to make a living off the land. In Hawaii, where they were introduced and found paradise, these deer are wreaking havoc on the local flora. They're like green munching machines, wiping out native plants left and right. This messes with the whole ecosystem, leaving other critters hungry and habitats struggling to recover. To top it off, these axis deer are tough cookies. They shrug off diseases that can knock down native deer populations, which just means they keep on breeding and spreading. Handling these invasive deer is no easy task. Some folks argue for more humane ways to manage them, like birth control or relocating them, rather than just hunting them down. Who do you agree with? The conservationists fighting against invasive species, or the activists fighting against them? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.